Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Red Line High Rail Access Tunnel public meeting. My name is Adam Kamoun, and I work in the General Manager's office. I will be serving as the moderator for tonight's meeting. Next slide, please. First of all, I would like to introduce the interpretive services of this public meeting so that people who need them can get access to them. We have ASL interpreters tonight for the meeting. If you would like to view the ASL interpreter at all times, keep your view settings in gallery mode. To pin the interpreter's video, click the ellipses in the top right corner of the interpreter's video and select Pin Video. You will need to repeat this process each time we switch interpreters. We also have English, Spanish, and Mandarin interpreters. If you require these services, please click the interpretation, the globe icon on your screen and select the language you wish to hear. Now I am inviting our Spanish interpreter, Enrica, to introduce this feature in Spanish.
Favor de buscar el globo al pie de la pantalla, van a escoger Interpretation y bajo eso van a buscar la lengua español para escuchar lo que estamos diciendo en español. Gracias.
Thank you. Now I'm inviting our Mandarin interpreter, Carmendy, to do the same.
对，这一次的会议都会被录影，然后如果你想要参与的话，请听国语的话，请按荧幕的上方，然后也有西班牙语跟其他的语言，请你如果想要按的话，请按荧幕的上方，谢谢。OK。
Thank you both. And then ASL will be covered by Summer and Ryan over the course of the evening. Thank you. Next slide. I would like to note that all MBTA activities, including public meetings, are free of discrimination. The MBTA complies with all federal and state civil rights requirements, preventing discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, limited English proficiency, and additional protected characteristics. We welcome the diversity from across our entire service area. If you have any questions or concerns, please visit www.mbta.com/Title 6 or Title VI to reach the Office of Diversity and Civil Rights. Next slide. I would like to remind everyone of the rules for participating in this meeting, as well as remind everyone again that this meeting is being recorded. If you prefer not to be recorded, please keep your video off and your microphone muted. We hope that we have designed an online public meeting that will be interactive and provide an opportunity for us to have a conversation together. Next slide. Before we begin that conversation, I want to review a few technical aspects of the Zoom platform. You can now view closed captions by clicking the closed captions feature and selecting from the options shown. Show subtitle will display a caption at the bottom of the screen. View full transcript will display the meeting's audio transcription in a window to the right. Next slide. All attendees will be muted during the presentation to prevent excessive background noise. If you are viewing this meeting on a computer, toggle speaker view to see the presentation more prominently. If you're on a smartphone, swipe to change views. You may use the chat button to submit a typed question or comment at any point during the meeting. Please direct your questions to ask a question or someone else. We will be monitoring the questions and comments during the presentation, but ask that you hold substantive comments and questions for the Q&A session that we will have later in the meeting. If you have a technical problem, please share your issue in the chat feature at any point during the meeting, and we will respond as quickly as possible. Next slide. Before we hop into the agenda, I just want to take a moment and acknowledge and thank the elected officials on the call tonight and acknowledge them. I think we have a couple of folks who are on. I want to thank Senator Pat Jalen, who has been with us throughout the life of this project, along with Representative Dave Rogers. I understand you have conflicts that you have to attend as well this evening, but I want to take a moment to acknowledge them for attending and also being present throughout the project. So thank you, folks. We will also be acknowledging Representative Owens, Representative Decker, who have also had representation at this meeting, along with city officials who've also been engaged with this project throughout. With that in mind, I'll turn it over to the team.
Thank you, Adam. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedule tonight to participate in our general project update for the Red Line High Rail Access Tunnel project. To be clear, the intent of this meeting is to provide the community with a general overview if you are joining us for the first time, as well as give an opportunity to answer questions for those that continue to support the project. At this time, I'd like to introduce Joseph Rigney of Delve Underground, the engineer of record for this project. Joe?
Thanks, Ron, and good evening, everyone. We've got only a few agenda items, but there's a lot of information in each one of these. We'll start with the project overview and hope to answer most of the common questions, which are why this site, what will happen during construction, what will the site look like once it's completed, and how will the site operate. We'll also reiterate the project benefits, why it's important to the MBTA and its riders. And in short, it's the ability to allow a key piece of equipment, a high rail vehicle, which is what's shown on the right here, to have more direct access to the Red Line and increase efficiency in operations and maintenance. We'll go over the project timeline. Not a lot has changed on there, but we have achieved a few milestones, and the intent is still for the construction to occur from March 2026 until March 2028. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the purpose of this project is to provide high rail vehicle access to the Red Line, particularly west of the Charles River. So in the satellite image you see in the center here, the Red Line is overlaid, and on the top left you'll see Alewife Station, and on the bottom right you'll see the current right-of-way access point where a high rail vehicle can enter. So there's two ways that a high rail vehicle can enter now. One would be to shut down the Red Line completely, and you can access from that point and then continue up north. The second would be to wait until the non-revenue hours of 1:30 a.m. and 4 a.m. and enter through that point and then traverse towards the north along winding roads, which can be dangerous with carrying equipment. So the solution to help with this maintenance is to put a proposed access tunnel near Alewife Station. Again, shown at the top left is the geographical location. And this area was selected due to the fact that the Red Line starts to get very deep from that point until it makes its way into Boston. So as we looked at the tunnel options, the geometrical constraints is one of the first things that we looked at. Next slide, please. So looking a little bit more zoomed in on the project site here, you'll see it's mostly vegetated with a shared use pathway that's running up and down on the page, that gray line. You see the Alewife head house at the bottom center. That's where it's leading to pedestrians to and from that shared pathway. On the right, you'll see Russell Field, not shown here, but to the left is Alewife Station. The blue lines that you're seeing to the left of the gray pathway is a paved access road. Just to the right of that paved access, the pathway is a covered structure, and then the blue dotted line is where the tunnel extents are. The red dotted line is the existing tunnel extents, and we have some renderings that will show kind of three-dimensionally how this will look in the final conditions. So the constraints on the site obviously are the contaminated asbestos soil, and we also have the privately owned land with IQHQ, but the contaminated soil is really the big thing. If you go to the next slide, that's what we're hoping to answer with this. Why this site? If there's contaminated soil, and there's a couple different reasons. Next slide, please. So there was a lot of thought put into the sites. Again, where the tunnel is more shallow. Site number 1 was one that had a lot of opportunity. So the gray shaded area is where we looked for all different alignments. The blue is the final alignment that we settled on. We do have a team that brings a lot of experience with handling asbestos soils, and we do believe that this can be done safely and responsibly. This site, some of the benefits that we identified as we looked at this was that it's approximately 500 feet from the closest residential area. It has good proximity to the station, which offers construction benefits as well as operational benefits. The site is relatively open, no power lines or other obstructions of that nature. We were able to achieve a short tunnel length with this site. Compared to other areas around here, this had relatively low traffic impacts. There was no immediate obstructions with anything that IQHQ was doing with their developments. And this is also the lowest construction and structural risk, where the methods that we're using to construct this tunnel are similar to those that were used to install the existing red line tunnel that we have today. So site 2 is another one that we looked very close at. That's shown on the right side of the page. This is an MBTA owned parcel. However, it was being converted to an electric bus facility, and operationally, we just couldn't make the two work given overhead wires and other conflicts that we identified. This is also in a more residential area. You see a lot of houses around there, so there'd be a lot more traffic and community impacts. And then structurally, this required removal of the center wall. So the tunnel starts to get a little bit more narrow as it moves away from Alewife Station, where site number 1, our specific alignment is, it's a little bit wider, and that's where it's not far from a crossover. Site number 3, you'll see on the top left of the page, this would allow us to enter at the very end of the tunnel. The biggest constraint with site 3 and site 4 is that the trains are parked in the off-peak hours, which is the majority of the time when we'll be using this tunnel, from the platform at Alewife Station to the end of the tunnel. So if we were to construct at site number 3, we would enter into the tunnel, then be immediately met by parked trains. So apart from that, this is also in a dense community area, and there's parkland that would be disrupted. And then operationally, this would require redesign of the ventilation shaft that's there. Site number 4, again, similar constraint with parked trains, but this also posed a lot of structural risk and a lot of other coordination risk with the garage project. So it was deemed, not as good as site number 1. Site number 5, you'll see kind of just on the south of the head house. We would enter under Alewife Brook Parkway's bridge and then head down to the tunnel to the east. This would require permanent relocation of an existing multimodal path. It had the largest impacts to wetlands, and also had risk to the framing that was within the head house, which is a little bit unique to the structure. Next slide, please. So hopefully that lets people know why we chose this site. Now, moving on to kind of the second question that we usually get is what's going to happen during construction. On the left side, you'll see the bullets from top to bottom is the sequence of construction that's going to occur. As I move through the slides, you'll see the ones get bold that I'm speaking to. So the first thing we do is install erosion control fencing. That's the black dotted line you're seeing going around the site that I had showed earlier. That is the work zone for the contractor. They are only to enter and exit through Alewife Center Road. So on the top center of the page, you see site entrance and exit. That's where the contractor will enter and exit the site. After we've established the work limits and the entrance and exit, we'll install vibration and ear monitoring. The ear monitoring is shown in the blue dots. Mass DEP requires 6 monitoring locations around the perimeter of the site. We're providing 8 out of an abundance of caution. Mass DEP also says that the action level for the monitoring should be 0.01 fibers per cc. We've set even more stringent limits at 0.0078. Then beyond that, we've cast an even wider net with the purple dots that you see. Those are community ear monitoring points, still with the same stringent criteria. But again, now we have 12 monitoring points total versus the 6 that are required. We'll also have vibration and ground monitoring, which are more structural in nature. However, we have selected impacts for construction methods that are less impactful, just because we do not want the red line tunnel shaking or any of the surrounding structures. So inherently, we've picked things that are a little bit less disruptive. Next slide, please. So once we've established the monitoring, we'll install our temporary system, which is sheet piling walls. These are individual piles that interlock and form a continuous wall. You'll see the vehicles are working from within the area that's going to be excavated to the outer edges. So we're not leaving that footprint. And then there'll be a drill rig that will install what we call a jet grout plug in between those sheet pile walls. And in the end condition, we'll have a watertight pit at the end, where the sheet pile walls do not allow any water leakage, and the jet grout plug does not allow groundwater to make its way up from underneath the sheet piles. Next slide, please. So once the temporary system is in place, we'll begin soil excavation, which we understand is not as easy as it sounds, given the asbestos contamination. There is a process that we're following. I'll go over that timeline later on. The RAM plan and TWP stands for non-traditional work plan. We submitted in August a draft RAM plan, non-traditional work plan, that highlighted wetting and misting, which is what you see a photo of here. It is primitive, but it is effective, and it's been validated on multiple sites. That is the minimum criteria. We are looking at a tent and vent option, which we understand the community would favor, but we are having experts review and provide input on if this is a more prudent approach. So again, we're following that process, and we'll go over the timeline later on. Next slide. So as we excavate the soil, we will continue to brace the walls until we get to the bottom of the excavation, and then we will build the structure from the bottom up and remove braces as we're installing the structure. And this is what's referred to in the underground industry as cut and cover tunnel methods. And then once this is installed, we will break into the tunnel and do the final plantings. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide here I'm going to spend a lot of time with, so bear with me. There's a few things. I guess I just want to get people oriented. So you see the multimodal path kind of running sort of through the center of the page. On the right side, you'll see Russell Field Head House. The football field you see on the top right. So that kind of helps you get a little bit oriented. You'll see we're pointing at tunnel entrance on the left. That is the covered ramp structure that the vehicles will enter into, and the tunnel is underground just to the right of that. The trees that you see on either side of the ramp structure, along with the renderings, were put together by my design team's landscape architect. We did it in conjunction with City of Cambridge's landscape architect, the landowner IQHQ, and their landscape architect, Mass Audubon, Alewife Study Group, Cambridge for Trees, and Green Cambridge. So we had workshops with a lot of individuals that felt that they could provide a more scenic view here. So we put together this rendering, and this is also showing the overlooks. You see Overlook 1 and Overlook 2. These are going to be provided as part of the IQHQ developments. So those are kind of just the general features of the site. Getting a little bit more specific on how things work here. The covered ramp structure consists of a 4-foot high concrete wall above ground surface that goes continuously around the ramp, and then there's a flood door where we're pointing at tunnel entrance. So that flood door under access to the tunnel will open up, slide over to the path, block the path, allow vehicles to enter and exit. And again, this is meant to be more in the 1:30 to 4 a.m. windows. There are potentials for this to be accessed during a surge, but in that case, the red line would be shut down anyway. So that door will remain normally closed. And again, if we should ever find ourselves in a flood event, this creates a protection outside the tunnel. We have also regraded the site to make up for any compensatory storage. For those of you familiar with that or not familiar with that concept, if there's a flood event, there's some volume taken up with this structure here, and we've allowed for that volume to be displaced by regrading. So in the final conditions here, you'll see a slope indicator on top of the roof. The roof is meant to be white to reflect the sunlight. When water rains on top of the roof, it'll flow to the north. It'll hit an infiltration basin and then drain to a low spot that the rest of the site will drain to. So it's no different with or without the tunnel that collects at that low point. To the left of the multimodal path, when it rains, that stormwater will continue to drain southwest of the site to an existing wetlands. And again, this the same way that it's meant to function in the normal conditions. This rendering's not perfect. It doesn't show all the shrubs. We did increase the shrubs from 36 to 156. And the trees that you're seeing here, they're not all the trees. There are some over to the left. When we met in September, we talked about we were removing 30 trees. We were going to place for 30 trees. Through these meetings, we maximized the site and we ended up with 47. Admittedly, that's not the same caliper inches as what's out there today, but these trees will grow. We are still talking with IQHQ about other areas to plant trees and looking at other MBTA sites where we can plant trees. But as far as this project site, we believe we've maximized as much trees as we can in the shrubs. What's also not shown in this rendering is that facade, it's not gray as it's shown there. It's actually going to be a steel facade with perforation, so we'll have openings and it'll be a green color to help it kind of match more with the general landscape. So that's a lot to unpack. I know this is the first time people are seeing this rendering who haven't been part of the workshop, so we wanted to spend a lot of time taking a look at this here. Next slide, please. So again, going over the project benefits, we'll have a more reliable red line. There'll be shorter, less frequent shutdowns that results in faster commutes, fewer traffic impacts, fewer bus operations, which means lower bus maintenance costs. There will be reduced diesel emissions, from the less busing during the surges, which has some environmental impact that's hard to quantify, but certainly it's there. With the direct access, there'll be increased track time and increased productivity, which will help with maintenance and capital projects being completed cheaper and faster. And more of the work will be able to be done under non-revenue hours, 1:30 to 4, in lieu of surges. This project also has the unique benefit of being able to pay for itself over time, given all the aforementioned benefits. Next slide, please. So project timeline, again, we mentioned soil excavation and following the PIP process. We submitted a draft RAM plan in August, which highlighted the wetting and misting and the monitoring that we had mentioned. This is a public document available if people want to learn more about it, but in general, those are kind of the key features. We had a more in-depth meeting on those particulars, September 30th, 2024. We had a comment period that went until December 8th. We responded to those comments on February 6th, generally saying that the minimum criteria has been set. We are looking into tent and vent options, and really what will dictate that is the contractor's final RAM plan, which will be, I'll get to those steps later on, but it'll come in May, April of 2026. So that's where we are in the process for PAP. We also started the NOI approval process with the City of Cambridge in October, and we finished in December 16th with special conditions to continue to engage with the community like we are here, and to issue a final planting plan. And again, we don't expect much changes, but we will reissue any changes that are made throughout the project. So that brings us to today, March 2025. We're still working through the easement process. We're hoping to have that completed October 2025. We're hoping to have the project advertised November 2025. and notice to proceed to a contractor in March 2026. They'll have some additional soil borings that they'll need to do as part of the RAM plan, but we're anticipating that they'll have that submitted again April, May 2026, and then we anticipate that they'll be mobilized with the heavier construction June 2026, and then wrapping up early 2028. So with that, I believe we're ready to open up to questions. If you go to the next slide.
Thank you, Joe. If you would like to share a comment or ask a question, please use the chat feature at the bottom of the screen to type your to submit a typed question or comment. We'll alternate between reading questions and comments already submitted. For people who wish to share a question verbally, please use the raise hand function. For those joining on the phone, you can raise your hand by pressing star and then the number 9. All attendees who speak other languages, please raise your hand to provide your comments verbally for the interpreters to hear and repeat your comments. Before we open the comment and question segment to the public, we would like to invite any elected officials in attendance or their staff to ask any questions or make any comments. Please use the raise hand feature at this moment so we can recognize and unmute you. Apologies. I think we have Representative Rogers. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. Thanks for unmuting me first. And thank you for the presentation. And we certainly appreciate your reaching out to the community and this community engagement, which is incredibly important. So thank you for holding this meeting. That said, as I'm sure you know, and as I've expressed all along, and other elected officials have expressed, and as the community members have expressed, there is a great deal of concern about asbestos here. We have members of the community on the call who've, whether they wanted to or not, become experts on asbestos removal because of previous activity in this area. And so much so that Cambridge has adopted a specific asbestos ordinance. And as you know, there's a conversation about how close the T can get to complying with that ordinance. And what we've heard in the give and take is that you plan to exceed the Mass DEP, that is the Mass Department of Environmental Protection standards. But what's still under consideration, as we understand it, is this tenting and venting and using the techniques set out in the Cambridge ordinance. What's been explained is that some of the excavation equipment that would be used for this tunnel make it difficult to do the tenting and venting, but that you're exploring so-called checkerboard tenting and venting. And we want to urge you to do that. You know, I've had a lot of community meetings, met with a lot of my neighbors. I live in North Cambridge, not too far from this site. The community feels strongly about it, that the tenting and venting, or checkerboard tenting, as I guess we're calling it, should be used. So that's one key thing I want to express. And I'm sure you're going to hear a lot about that from the folks on this call. Another thing, and you did touch on this in your presentation, which we appreciate, but which we hope you can elaborate on, is the location itself. Why this location and the process you arrived at to get there. There's a concern in the community that community members and frankly electeds, people like me, were sort of brought in late after you'd already had your own internal deliberations about where to put this thing. You finally settled on this location, and that's when you began to engage with the community. And I think what some community members are wondering is, why weren't community members involved earlier when you were still in exploring where to put this? So that's another thing I hope you can address. Another thing is the IQHQ, the big project that just went there, and the neighbors have been through a lot in this area. They kind of worked out a deal on landscaping and what the area would look like, a meadow, and While I do see you explained somewhat what you plan to do with plantings and trees, you know, I hope you'll be very mindful of what the neighbors have to say about landscaping as well. And finally, just generally, that we really hope that this isn't just sort of, pardon the expression, a dog and pony show, but that in fact, as you listen tonight, you'll take notes and you'll try to, everywhere you can, incorporate the feedback of the community to what's going on here. So thank you again for the opportunity to hear from you and to comment. And please listen to my friends and neighbors and what they have to say this evening. And thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I'll ask the project team if you can address the location piece, and then our process for the tent and vent kind of timeline.
Thank you, Adam. I will field the initial tenting and venting. Actively, we are evaluating both internally and externally additional data points, and we can certainly provide further updates at a later date, but we are certainly looking at that checkerboard approach for tenting and venting as a possibility. And anything additional that comes out of our evaluation, we will certainly share with the community. And with that being said, Joe, if you would like to take it from the site selection.
Yeah, I think as far as site selection, I think first and foremost, it needs to work operationally with the MBTA. So there's various departments that you know, need to say it's okay, and that's where we'd hate to come up with you know, a tunnel that, you know, the community might have really liked. I think site number 4 was one that perhaps, you know, although it had traffic impacts and other things, you know, might have been best from the community standpoint. But operationally, if the MBTA is saying it doesn't work, it's really not a worthwhile investment. So there's a lot of rounds within the department that the MBTA needs to make. So that was really the process that was followed, making sure that it worked for all the people that need to use the tunnel at the end of the day. And then we were ready to go out with you know, knowing that we've kind of run it to ground at that point.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Ron. Senator Jalen. Sorry, we'll have you unmuted.
Yes. I can't do better than Rep. Rogers in expressing what some of the concerns are. I know people also are concerned about whether other sites not directly adjacent, not in Cambridge, were considered. So, but I think I'm here to mostly to listen to the conversation and what people have to say. I have heard from people, but I would like to hear the conversation between the neighbors and the T. So I'm here listening and writing down comments. I think David and I first learned about this, last summer? And I don't know how many meetings we've been to, a bunch.
Thank you, Senator. And I want to just highlight, in the interim, we've had several conversations with the community and several working sessions with the abutters and members of the community, talking about things such as the planting plan. And that's something that we also want to revisit as we get closer to implementing the planting plan. That is a requirement as an order of conditions. I'm overstepping my project team a little bit, but either Ron or Joe, if you guys want to go over some of the conversations that we have with folks, some of the conversations that we will continue to have with the community, I think that's a good opportunity to kind of invite other folks who haven't been part of the process. If there's those opportunities, we, outside of just these public meetings, to kind of roll up the sleeves and have a conversation with the T about this going forward.
Thank you, Adam. Yes, no, we on the projects aspect would continuously be working to develop the final planting plan and landscape plan. And I don't know if you have any other additional comments or to add at this point, Monique, but we will continue engaging the community with those updates and betterments that we have discussed in the past, and continue to see what we can do on our adjacent properties above and beyond outside of this project.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Okay, folks. If there are no more comments from elected officials, we're going to open it up. Any last comments or questions from elected officials? Okay. With that, so just as a reminder again, if you'd like to share a comment or a question, please use the chat feature, or please use the raise hand feature, and we will ask to unmute you in the order that you have raised your hand. First, I'm seeing Diane Martin, so I will ask to unmute you. Go ahead, Diane.
Hello, I am just going to bring it up. Okay. Thank you. I'm Diane Martin of 34 Madison Avenue in North Cambridge. I try to keep informed about what is happening in my neighborhood. It is an area that is undergoing a lot of change, including the IQ-HQ lab development, plans to redo Linear Park, the future demolition and rebuild of the Alewife MBTA garage, and creating a more park-like and accessible Jerry's Pond. For decades, the Alewife Study Group worked to promote benefits and protections for the neighborhood. Now, with no input from ASG and other residents, without even informing us until fairly recently, the MBTA has steamrolled their way to build a high rail tunnel on MBTA and IQHQ land where a pollinator field was planned. Although I don't oppose building high rail access, the lack of transparency exhibited by the MBTA, the behind closed doors aspect of planning for 2 years without community input, the number of established trees planned for removal in an area already considered a climate heat island for Cambridge, and most of all, the proposal that the MBTA's plan to remove large amounts of asbestos contaminated soil close to and upwind from a youth playing field in this dense neighborhood without the most protective tent and vent measures guaranteed. The contractor should not have the final word on tenting and venting. This is a safety issue that impacts residents, and we should have a say in this decision. All of these issues have made me opposed to this high rail project at the currently selected site. Residents need more time and to be part of any process that impacts our neighborhood, including site selection. Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback. Is there any part of that the project team would like to address?
I would like to say that we do hear you. I know we haven't been perfect with communication in the past, and we do look to improve that moving forward. And I do open the project website to anyone that has any additional concerns outside of what is discussed here so that we can respond accordingly. But we do continue to evaluate the tenting and venting as a potential resolution to address this. But at this time, the project does feel we are doing everything in a safe manner to ensure the safety of the community is met. But if there is any further questions or comment, please feel free to submit any other additional questions in the comment and address comments through emails. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Charles. I'll ask to unmute you.
Hi, this is Charles Teague, 90 Jackson Street, which is downwind of the site. I'm just saying, I think, let me see. Really, you referenced Cambridge for Trees as having input. We didn't really have input. You really you ignore the fact that you cannot replace the mature trees, and you're not even coming close to the Cambridge Tree Protection Ordinance. So, and to just go on about trees is people on your project team denied cutting down large trees at Alewife Station to the Cambridge Conservation Commission. So really, you can't be trusted. And we're not going to trust you with thousands of children's lives. This is just, the site never should have been considered. It's totally irresponsible. You talk about construction risk. We don't care about your construction risk. We care about people's risk. So thank you.
Thank you for your feedback, Charles. One question I have in the chat, sorry, it's just moving a little fast for me to read them, is how often will the tunnel be used?
Joe, you want to field that? I know I'll briefly say that it'll be for maintenance use and mostly non-revenue, which would be overnight activities. But in terms of a regular schedule, it will be dependent on the needs to support an operating red line.
Yeah, I think in general, we're looking probably more weekly, but as Ron mentioned, it's going to depend on, you know, the needs at the current time.
Thank you, team. Next up, I have Martin. I'm going to ask to unmute you.
Thank you very much for giving me time to talk. I mean, really, it's simple. Move the site. I mean, this doesn't make any sense at all. This area was dedicated for being used for other uses when all the agreements were made. And it's just insane that we're even talking about building in asbestos, not following Cambridge ordinances, not planting trees in the right amount, avoiding other laws about wetlands because by making the site small enough and in line enough that you don't have to. I mean, what are we talking about here? We're avoiding everything to get away from it. When you waited for 2 years, and yes, by the way, I live in North Cambridge as well, right downwind of this. I mean, this is just disgusting. I don't know what else to say about it. This shouldn't even be an option. I'm sorry, at all.
Thank you, Martin, for your feedback, and thank you for joining tonight's call. One question I have again in the chat is, when red line track reconstruction is done, where will materials be staged?
There should not be any stage or remaining materials at this location unless it is going to be used for maintenance activities for that duration. But there's no stockpiling intended to be at this location.
Thank you. Next up, we have Anne. Anne, I will ask to unmute you. Anne, I'm not sure if I lost you. Did you still want to ask a question? I'll ask another question from the chat in the interim. What is the process for air monitoring units? Oh, geez, I just lost it. Chat's moving a little too fast for me. Sorry. What is the process for air monitoring units that will be used? What will happen if the asbestos is higher than your limits? Does that mean you failed and the asbestos is now in the air going into people's lungs?
Joe, you feel that one?
Sure. Yeah. So we're going to start with putting up the air monitoring, collecting a baseline. And again, I guess maybe I'll answer kind of or respond to a lot of the comments that were said. So I guess, the Cambridge Protective Ordinance with the tent and venting predated the Mass DEP, rulings which, allow wetting and misting. And I think the claim that tenting and venting is superior than misting is sort of what we're trying to validate with all the experts, because the experts that we're talking to with, think that it perhaps is a false sense of security, and not going to be as protective. So those are some of the things that we're looking into. So we do want to do what's best. At the end of the day, it's about making sure that asbestos is not released into the air, whether that's through the means and methods of tenting and venting, or whether that's the means and methods of wetting and misting. If we do trigger an alarm at 0.0078 or above, the construction will stop immediately. There will be sheets of poly that are put over to protect the site. And we'll have to adjust the methods that are being used and figure out why that happened and make adjustments. But again, we're speaking from experience, and that's really the biggest thing, is that we have experts who have done this, time and time again, and been successful using, wetting and misting. It's been done on the IQHQ site through other different means, but and been successful. So again, I think there's a very high confidence level that we're not going to see airborne asbestos, but in the unlikely event that we do, the site would be shut down. It would be, when I say poly, I'm talking about a tarp, over the soil that's uncovered, and we would reevaluate at that point. But again, we see that as very unlikely.
Thank you, Joe. On that, there's a question regarding other contaminants in the soil, possibility for arsenic. Is that something that we found in our testing?
I don't believe so. We have our environmental engineer on from CDW. Brian, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe so.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, we haven't identified specifically arsenic. It may have been identified on the IQHQ site, but the other contaminant I think maybe the public's thinking about is naphthalene, which is probably the secondary contaminant here that we have to deal with. And it's just a sort of a separate process from the asbestos, but it's there, and we have the means and we have the RAM plan that in place to deal with it. So.
Thank you. I believe I saw someone's hand. Yes. Hi, Jeb. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Yes, thank you very much. I live on Harvey Street, also abutting this site. And our community has a dozen or more children, most of whom attend public schools in Cambridge and use that field, as well as many of the adults in this community. And we are 100% opposed to using this site. So the question has been raised a couple times, and we would like you to answer it. What would it take to get you to move the site? Because we are not prepared to have our children and our neighbors and friends exposed to asbestos.
Thank you, Jeb. I think the team is taking all the measures necessary and set out both by DEP, excuse me, in order to avoid that from happening. I'll turn to Joe and Ron to kind of repeat that. And as we also consider the tent and vent and continue to evaluate that option and approach as well.
Yes, thank you, Adam. I will echo what was just said. We do feel that what we are proposing here at this location will provide the community with a safe result. And we are continuing to evaluate the tenting and venting as a proposed means and methods for the site activity. However, at this point in time, the RAM plan is showing the non-traditional monitoring and misting. And as we receive further information based off of our evaluation data points, internal and external conversations, we are sure to be updating the community with those additional results.
Thank you. And there is a question regarding having this location be in Arlington. Can we address that for folks on tonight?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah,
Relocating these
apologies.
to Arlington? Is that
Relocating the tunnel or the access tunnel to Arlington, is it? I don't know if that was part of our evaluation process, but
Joe, was that considered?
I don't know where exactly in Arlington we're talking, but again, as I mentioned, as you start to move east of Alewife Station, that tunnel starts to drop, pretty quickly, and it starts to make it very difficult, just even geometrically. Where do you start your tunnel from, and then where does that, what slope does that get on, and where does it put you? So. The further you start moving, from Alewife Station, the more complex this starts, becoming. So I think, again, generally we looked in the window that we thought geometrically we could even make it work. And again, I'm not sure if there's somewhere else specific that's been asked about.
Thorndike Field, as folks are alluding to.
And let me answer that question about why we're not going into that Thorndike Field area. That is the end of our red line tracks. That is where our red line trains are stored for the night. We service those trains there during off hours. If we have the tunnel if we had our access tunnel at that location, we would not be able to use it because again, our red line vehicles would be in the way. So that location does not work with regards to our MBTA operations.
Thank you, George. Next up, we have Ann. I will ask to unmute you. Go ahead, Ann.
Oh, hi, I'm Ann McDonald. I live in North Cambridge in the Whittemore area, and I just want to say I appreciate the MBTA looking to find ways to maintain the red line better. I live where I sit with all your idling buses when you do bus, so I would support this idea of less buses. But I am really concerned about trust. I think a number of people have mentioned it in the chat. I've gone to the site meeting, I've gone to the Concom meetings, and I feel that we just get that one same slide about the other sites. We hear a little bit of explanation, but in particular, site number 4, the new Alewife garage development project, it's still the old garage that you've got there in your showing how it would work. I think the community deserves, first of all, to understand more specifics about the RFP on the garage development project in general, and then why could we see some more specifics? In other words, the details on this particular site that you're asking us to accept have been in great detail, but we've seen nothing on the other sites, especially with the idea of design being open and being considered in the parking garage site. I think, it says very high risk construction, but we're going to build this whole development there. It would minimize the impact on the neighborhood to have one construction site and one set of things going. And I think we deserve to at least understand what the engineering difficulties or siting difficulties would be with that, especially when that's really an open can of worms that we know nothing about. And I just want to echo that I walk around this site every single day around the back of IQHQ and Russell Field and see so many kids playing in the field and so many people biking through there. And so it may not feel like it's close to a residence, but it's close to many, many people who are unprotected every single day out there using the natural space and the playing fields. And I just think this just feels like this got jammed into us. And then, if we were staying with this site, and this is the only option, the idea that the site path is so limited that you can't plant larger trees, that you can't tent it. There's just like ongoing things that are just like, nope, we already decided this is all we can do. So I really think we deserve to see more specifics about why you can't move it to the garage site and see some ideas, maybe some design where because this feels baked in before any of us ever got to see anything. So thank you for having this idea that we should have this, but the process has not been open to the people that live in this neighborhood and whose health is on the line. So thank you.
Thank you for your feedback, and I'll turn to the project team to address the a couple of those points. Joe or Ron?
Sure, I'll start with saying, Anne, thank you for bringing that up. In terms of specifics to the garage project, again, our project team here is really focused on the tunnel aspect. We do have an additional project team that has, as far as I know, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, that they are working very early stages for pre-planning. And in terms of schedule and alignment and maintenance needs, we're looking to support the red line as soon as it would be feasible. Given the additional complexities and the garage being in an unknown design state at this point in time, it doesn't seem that would be a best opportunity for this to be integrated at that project, given the constraints on the time limitations that we're looking to support maintenance of the new up and running, no speed restrictions on that red line now. But Joe, if you would like to elaborate further on that.
Yeah, I think again with the parking structure, again, had that same constraint of trains being parked from the platform back to the tail track. So where we come in there, we still hit parked trains, and then structurally speaking, we said it was the highest risk because the garage is all on pile caps, as we call them. So there's all foundations, and it's all sort of at grade, was kind of at street level. So when we tunnel, we're excavating soil right next to a pile, which relies on that soil and the friction that soil provides to kind of stand in place. So it imposes risk of the columns that support that structure and ultimately lead load path down to the ground of starting to settle. So that's really the biggest thing. And then is with a new garage, are they going to reuse these existing piles? Are they going to put new piles in there? Are those piles going to are they going to build a sub basement where they want access where this tunnel is to make a below ground parking? Those are just some of the other more technical issues, but again, it started with just the ability to not get in there when trains are parked, which made it sort of the non-starter.
Thank you, Joe. Mary Jane, I'm going to unmute you. You will be the last verbal person to speak. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just echo my friends and neighbors that this is actually appalling to think that you've gone this far down the road in a site that has so many issues and has had so little conversation about. But I guess what I don't want to, people have spoken to that. When I look at the slide on the screen right now, it looks to me like there's a truck with an open back, and what looks to almost be like a tractor trailer truck. Are you telling us that trucks of good size are going to be driving along the multimodal path and entering the tunnel at night, quote, as needed? Is that what this is about? That there are trucks going through there? That's my question. I just don't, in a residential neighborhood where people like to sleep at night, we're going to have construction trucks?
Ron, or I don't know if you want me to take that one or if you want. Yeah, so the first slide we had showed, how these trucks look. Again, you're right. It is essentially a truck, but the work that they're going to be doing is in the tunnel. So it's rubber tires, and then they convert to a rail mounted system. So they'll propel along the rails once they get on there. But yes, it'll be a temporary crossing over, but the same as if a truck was passing down Alewife Center Road in the middle of the night, regardless. And again, it will be under a flagged operation, where we're going to make sure that people are out of harm's way as these trucks are entering through the covered ramp section.
Thank you, Joe. So the time now is 7 p.m. I want to thank folks for hopping on tonight's call and expressing the questions and feedback to the project team. This is not the end of the conversation. We have recorded a lot of the questions from tonight. We memorialize it, We do have the project email as well as website. Please send us any questions. We are responsive via that mailbox. It is monitored by the project team, a lot of the folks that you heard from tonight, and we're happy to continue the conversation outside of just having this meeting itself. So again, folks, thank you so much, and our team will continue to engage with the community going forward.